Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. In our last session, we talked about the impurity that exists in both passages which nullify the wudu, the ablution. In today's session, inshallah, we'll be talking about the other impurities that exit the body other than the two passages. One of the impurities that can exit the body other than the two passages is blood. So if blood exits the body from any part of the body and exceeds the wound, then that will nullify the wudu. But also the condition will be that it reaches to a place where you have to wash that particular place in wudu and ghusl. Now what does that mean? Is that if there's a cut or you hurt yourself and it starts bleeding, but the blood does not exceed the wound, it does not go beyond the wound, then your wudu will still remain intact and you don't have to repeat the wudu. But if that blood exceeds the wound, that will nullify the wudu. The other example is that if your ear or the eye starts to bleed from inside and the blood comes out of the ear or comes out of the eye, then in that case it will nullify the wudu. But if in the same case, if the blood stays within the eye and it does not come out, or if it's in the ear and it does not come out, then the wudu will still remain intact, meaning that you don't have to make a wudu. Now, since you don't have to wash the internal part of your ears or the eyes in wudu, neither in ghusl, therefore this will not break the wudu. On the same token, there's a slight difference when bleeding from the gums and the teeth. So if a person spits out and he sees reddishness in the saliva, then that will nullify the wudu. But if it's yellowish and very light color, then that amount will not be taken into consideration and the wudu will remain intact. But if a person spits out and he sees reddishness and it's overwhelming the saliva, then in that case the wudu will break and you have to make another wudu. But in another case, if a person bites on something that is solid, like a carrot or an apple, in that case, if someone has a weak gum and then he bites on them, and then he sees a little reddishness on the apple or the carrot, in that case, if he sticks his finger in his mouth and touches the place where he seems that the blood was coming out, but when he brings it out, he doesn't see the effect of blood on his finger, then in that case, it will be okay and he doesn't have to make his wudu. But if he sees the effect of the blood on his finger, then that will be considered nullification of the wudu. The evidence for these cases is the hadith narrated by Daraqutni in Mishkat from Tamim al-Dari radiallahu anhu, that he said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, al-wudu min kulli damin sa'ilin, that wudu is from every flowing blood. Also another hadith by Tabarani in Majma' al-Zawaid from Salman radiallahu anhu, he said, I was bleeding from my nose, so I asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he replied, Ahdith lima hadatha wudu'an, that because of your wudu has been broken, make another wudu. The second thing that we'd like to mention is vomiting. That's also impurity that comes from the stomach and a person vomits. In this case, that will break the wudu if it's mouthful or more. And the way how to make the judgment that if a person cannot hold his mouth closed, then that will be considered a mouthful or more. In that case, that will break the wudu. But if it's less than that, then it would not break the wudu. In another case, if the reason has changed, for example, a person vomits many times and each time the reason was different, each one will consider a separate vomit and each one will be counted as whether a mouthful or more. If it's less, then it will not break the wudu. If it's more, then it will break the wudu. But if the cause is one single cause for all the different vomits, then you will calculate all of them together. If 2 or 3 together, it was a mouthful or more,